Welcome to The Real Build. I am Jamila, your host, owner-operator of VLS Developments, and I am so lucky to have a very good friend of mine. Well, I mean, we probably need to drink a few more bottle of wines together to become very, very good friends, but we have crossed paths in this industry over the last decade. Andrew Gaucher of G Group Developments. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Andrew Gaucher is third-generation developer in Kelowna, which I found out recently. We did some podcasting together and dove into our work histories. And G Group Developments has been around how many decades?
Close to 5 decades now. 5
decades. So you're officially the most knowledgeable person I've had on this show.
Oh, I don't know. If you include all of the decades, maybe.
5 decades of developing shopping centers, condo buildings, large single-family home communities.
Subdivisions, yeah.
Subdivisions, marinas, commercial. Like, incredible. I'm sure there's stuff you drive around that you don't even know that your grandfather did.
Absolutely. My grandfather and dad started Four Seasons Commercial Realty originally. So there are a couple of realtors with their own outfit here, and they did a lot of land deals. So a lot of major developments that they did zoning and then sold it to another developer or a builder, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, all the lands around Costco, et cetera, a lot of the upper mission has been one way or the other tied to my dad and grandpa before me joining.
And so they were strictly developers for 2 generations, right?
They started both as real estate agents, and then my grandpa stayed mostly on the sales side, looking for land and development opportunities. Then my dad got more into development. Okay. One of his first developments in town was the little convenience store on the corner of Kalo. It used to be a Max, or maybe it still is a Max. Max, that little strip mall. Okay. And then he did Southridge up in the Upper Mission. He did that along with Emil Anderson.
Southridge, wow, yep. That's a well-known project.
Yeah. So that was one of the first South Slopes projects, roughly at the same time as Kettle Valley. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, this is the Mission Save On Food Shopping Center. He developed that.
That's where the Save On
Foods is there. Tim Hortons, Scotiabank, etc.
The Fix Cafe.
Yeah. And then he started amalgamating land out in Glenmore in the early 2000s, mm-hmm. and that's one of our primary focuses right now is McKinley Beach, an 872-acre master plan community.
McKinley Beach. Now, let's not forget about Southwind at Sarson's.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that where you kind of joined in?
It is. So
when that happened?
So I started my construction company when I was in my second year of undergraduate degree here at University of British Columbia, Okanagan. Mm-hmm. So that first company I started was called Green Solutions Inc., and I was Kelowna's first built green builder. So
wow. What year would have this been?
This would have been 2005-ish, 2006.
So BC's energy efficiency guidelines are just finally catching up to you.
In some ways. So back then, I mean, while I was going to university, so I did my Built Green course. I got my LEED accredited professional designation and got into construction then. So I did that for 3 or 4 years, and then a couple years after graduating from undergraduate degree, I joined the family development company, which was right when 2008, 2009 hit. We were launching. Yeah. Well, I was fortunate in the sense that I did see that the peak of the market. I saw us do a huge sales launch, Southwind at Sarson's Phase 2,
yes,
which is fantastic. I think that's about the time you and I met.
That is the time you and I met. So it would have been
probably about 2008.
Yeah.
And then we don't need to rehash it, but everybody knows what happened in 2009 and 10, 11. So mm-hmm. Big market correction here. Well, I mean Canada-wide and definitely in British Columbia and Kelowna.
Yep.
And then it was pretty flat the years from 2011 to 2014. The market was flat. It wasn't good, it wasn't bad. It was just kind of stagnant.
Yes. I mean, still money to be made, good opportunities to find. If you could sit on land.
That's the best time. And, I'm sure we'll come back to this later, but we're sort of near the same point in this second cycle. So yes. 2008, 2009 was the peak of the last cycle. I would say almost with certainty 2021 was the peak of this cycle. Mm-hmm. And, we've had a couple down years already. Mm-hmm. And, whether we have 6 months or 12 months more is anybody's guess. But certainly the next part of the cycle is where there's a bottom of the cycle, and the bottom happens before the next top of of the cycle happens. So
Yeah.
like you said, great timing now. You're starting to see a little bit better pricing action in terms of land values. And it's a great time to start preparing for the next market cycle. It's absolutely hard to pre-sell today. It's hard to pre-lease today. Everything's a bit of a grind, but again, it's a good point in the cycle to get ready for the next action.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a position as a company where you can land bank right now, that would be a smart thing to do.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people forget how long it takes to bring a project to market. You know, when you find a site, it can take 3, 6, 9 months to buy the site. And then it can take 6, 12, 18, 24 months to get the zoning and permits. And then it takes, you know, it's somewhat in parallel, but after that, you got to still design it and you got to get building permitting. So these things absolutely.
Yeah.
These things don't happen in days. These are measured in years. Even small projects, unfortunately, these days are measured in years.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing people don't understand, especially right now when we talk about having a housing crisis and not enough inventory for people to move into. The understanding of how long it takes a huge amount of individuals and a huge amount of money to produce very small number of doors.
Yeah.
This is taken for granted a lot. From the consumer, from the financiers, from the government, you know, other than people in it.
It's very easy to get confused how long it takes. You know, over the last 12 months or so, there's been a lot of new intervention through our British Columbia NDP government and trying to loosen up the supply, making it easier for more people to participate and build houses and build infill housing and build carriage houses, etc.
Yeah.
And I've seen criticisms already saying like, well, it hasn't, you know, how many new houses has it started? And there's so many factors that go into, you know, when and how housing starts, but it takes months. So whether you love the NDP's housing policies or hate them, you have to acknowledge that these things don't happen in 6 months. They'll happen. You'll see the results in 6 years.
Yeah. And I mean, like, even though the new legislation was mandated in every municipality in June of this year, if a owner was on top of that and excited about it and wanted to get started the minute the new zoning was put into their municipality, it would, and if they were working with a professional team, it would be a year before they even started digging a hole in the ground for whatever they wanted to build.
That's right.
If they tried to do it on their own, I mean, it could be a year and a half to 2 years. There's stumbling blocks you hit. There's things, you know, as a professional you can challenge and move forward. There's different professionals of surveying and these sort of things you need to get involved in moving the process along, which you could learn when you submit your application. You got to go back a couple steps and do things over. So the development process is time, and it is worth hiring a professional to be involved in this with you.
Yeah, you know, you of course you're going to pay a professional to help you manage a project, but you're going to save a lot of money and time in the long run.
Yeah.
You know, they've for the most part, professionals will have encountered a lot of the problems that you don't yet know exist, and they'll help you avoid them.
Yeah.
And when it comes to developing 4 or 40 houses, errors can get very expensive very quickly. So you want to avoid.
And in 40, it's easy to bury those errors a little bit here and there, right? But when it's one project, it can become painful.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, unfortunately, every once in a while, that's why you see projects stall out, right? Something happens, somebody missed something, and, you know, listen, everyone's human. It happens to the best of us. But that's why you see some projects, especially at this point in the cycle, sometimes just might sit either before construction starts or, God forbid, in mid-construction, and it sits there for years.
We're going to get way more into this. I do want to come back and talk about a major community that you and your family, your company, your construction company has been developing, McKinley.
Yeah, McKinley Beach.
McKinley Beach. Unbelievable. Amazing community amenities, marina, winery, beautiful lakefront homes, award-winning homes. You have brought to a team of award-winning builders. You have multifamily going in there.
Yep.
We're going to take a break, but I want to talk about that journey, the years to come, and what it takes to put a master plan community together.
Love to dig in with you.
All right. We'll be back soon. Welcome back to The Real Build. This is Jamila, your host, owner-operator of VLS Developments, and I am super lucky to have Andrew Gaucher here with me in the studio today. Hi, Andrew.
Hello, hello.
We have been talking about his company's 50 years of development in Kelowna, really specifically. And I want to dive into a major community you have been spearheading with G Group and with your construction company, Dynamic Constructors. Did I say that correctly?
You did. Thanks.
Okay. President and operator of these companies, Andrew is just the calmest person I think I have met. Very factual, very to the point, knows his stuff. When he speaks, it's of purpose and he knows what he's saying, but cool as a cucumber.
Oh, well, thank you. I've got you fooled then.
Perfect. So right before the break, we brought up a major community that he has been spearheading the development of. And when you're talking about this, like his family had been acquiring this land, and this community is McKinley Beach. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, thank you. So it started with a relationship with the Flintoff family, with my grandpa and my dad. So actually, before any land acquisition started, it was a relationship where one of the Flintoffs worked with my grandpa at a local appliance store, I believe, in the 50s and 60s. So my dad started putting the land together in the early 2000s. Zoning, so land use approvals, and the marina approvals took about 8 years. I came on board in the latter end of that. And then we've been in the ground under construction when this most recent cycle started in 2014.
Okay. And I remember this starting. I remember you guys were bringing in a key group of builders.
Yep.
4 builders, right?
Five builders.
5 builders.
Yep.
Hand selected that were going to deliver the quality and maintain the construction and the beauty, the design. I know that you are very passionate about design and how things look and end and feel, along with their energy efficiencies and how it works with the land.
Yep.
So very specifically picked 5 builders and started McKinley. So, when you're doing a project like this, like we've just talked about, you've got years of acquiring the land, years of planning and development. The industry goes through different cycles in this time. So you may have started with one plan that you think works out great, and then all of a sudden something happens. You might want to densify. You might want to put more in.
Yep.
You might want to pull back.
It's a really great point. So when you're working on any large scale project, in this case, we've got 872 acres, 220 of which is McKinley Beach, the zoned lands. You're going to be working through multiple market cycles. So being able to stay flexible and sort of cater to what is viable in terms of the market at any given time is very important. So you look at things like phasing a project, the minimum number of units that you can bring on or homes at any one time, especially when markets are tricky, is very important. So it's you can't really phase a high rise, for instance. You're building 200, 300, 400 units. The first one, you might as well build all of them.
Yeah.
When it comes to ground oriented housing, so anything that you can walk into, whether it's a single family house or a townhouse or a row house, then you can phase it down into smaller pieces.
Yeah.
So that's a huge key consideration. And also diversity of product type, being able to offer different product types. So that community, McKinley Beach, is a master plan community. Overall, on the 220 acres, we will develop 1,300 units. But it's a diversity of product. We started with a lot of single family stuff and sort of built down to the lake, which enabled us to open up the marina. We've got a small little commercial node down there with Beach House Pizza in it, a great little coffee and pizza shop. And then we started working upslope from there to what we call a hill town, and that one is more vertical. So for example, we've sold a development site out there to Wexford Developments. They're doing 165 unit purpose-built rental, long-term rental only, so not short-term rentals. Beautiful lake views and very much a high-end rental community. But again, that really goes to show everything from large lot, estate type lakefront houses all the way to 6-story vertical purpose-built rentals.
Well, in the Hilltown section, which I'm familiar with, I've got a piece of property up there we've planned a beautiful condo building for. But you even have a community of tiny homes up there, mid-size homes, townhomes. You did this amazing product, and it was brilliant timing for this, but you wanted a single family for 500,000, right? That was kind of the thing.
That was a target, yeah. So when we first started the project, and you, like you said, you start with X idea in mind, and you have to make it viable to keep your business running, right? So you have to make it viable to any given market. So what we really wanted to do is to say, listen, McKinley Beach isn't just for $3 million lakefront homes. So we said, you start at the end. You say, what can we afford to deliver the market for $500,000 or $550,000? So in 2019, 2020, 2021, initially we started with a project called Forest Hills. That first phase started at $499,000, and you're getting 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, either a forest view or even some of them had lake views for 1-car garage for $499. And then after that initial phase of Forest Hills, we brought the Little House community on. That one was called Live, L-I-V, and we did that in partnership with a builder. So we did the development, builder turned it over and did the small housing construction. Those ones were 900 to 1,100 square feet, 2 to 3 bedrooms, and same thing. Those things started at 478 to 550-ish. So super, super well priced in a beautiful community, in a beautiful area of town, connected immediately to the 10 acres of trails right out their doorstep. So,
which gave you the ability to add this wonderful diversity of product for that community, which is super important because integrating different family mixes, different types, in those smaller homes, you can get working couples, you can get families with one child, you can get individuals, right? Mixing in with, empty nesters, retirees, and that sort of thing. So you're really creating a diverse community for people to live in, which is always the goal. Yeah,
it's very important. I mean, there's a more newer term that's thrown about called a complete community, and that often is implied to have things like, recreation and commercial right next door, but it also means having a wide diversity of housing types available. I mean, everything from students going to school at, UBC, which is a short 5-6 minute drive away, to retirees or divorcees or new families. We have anything and everybody, all of those different groups living in at McKinley Beach. So it's a very much a diverse community in that way, which was the intent. That wasn't by accident.
Yeah, and you also punch through beautiful new access because we all know the original McKinley roads.
Many new accesses. So yeah, so right now you can access McKinley directly off of Glenmore to Hilltown Drive, which is the new access you're referring to.
Yeah.
Historically, or the original access would be Glenmore to McKinley Road to Shaler, which is Shaler terminates into the McKinley Beach development. And then we're just in the process in the next 30 days, we're going to be punching through a new access that connects Hilltown Drive down to McKinley Road. So that one is being graded as we speak, and it'll be paved by Halloween.
Is that coming out below the water reservoir?
You got it.
Very cool. I didn't even know about that one.
Yeah, well, next time you go out there, you'll see it.
Well, and that's also a good point to say is as a developer, the road and infrastructure is really what you're creating, and you got to think about how many people are going to be living this area and what exits and access needs to be put in, which is all determined by engineers and doing calculations on how many people are going to be using the neighborhood. And once you get the property to the density, then these roads go in. A lot of people are like, oh, there's all these people and they can't go anywhere and drive anywhere, and why didn't they put these roads in before? The thing is like taxpayers wouldn't like you to spend their money on roads that aren't needed yet, right?
It's very much
a catch-22.
It is. It's very much a chicken and egg scenario where a lot of people say, well, we shouldn't have more homes in this area because there's not enough infrastructure, but it's the homes that pay for the infrastructure.
Absolutely.
So when you go to permit a project such as McKinley Beach or any other large-scale community, there is a ton of engineering and analysis that goes into the infrastructure requirements, whether it's water or sewer or roads, fire exiting, etc. All of these things are considered. It's not just a shot in the dark here. So when you do that as a developer, you need to look at it and say, okay, well, how many homes or units or condos or whatever you need to deliver in order to afford that infrastructure. On the scale of McKinley Beach, you're talking many tens of millions of dollars day one. So you can joke and say, that first lot you brought on cost $25 million or whatever the number might be. And
Not really a joke.
no, no, not really a joke. So for sure, it's high risk, and these things take many years. But like you said, it's very important to recognize that the infrastructure often follows the housing.
Yeah.
It's one of the challenges we're currently dealing with is we want to have a lot more commercial out there, and the zoning allows for it. But a lot of grocers will tell you, for example, we couldn't afford to go out there for free if there is no rent, because there's just not a critical mass yet. There will be at full build out. There's 1,300 units. So 1,300 units, I think Kelowna's average population per unit is something like 2.2 or 2.6.
Okay.
So you'll have in the realm of 5,000 residents, and interestingly, 5,000 residents is about the minimum viable critical mass of people to accommodate a small grocer.
And I'm so glad this conversation went there, because I literally today was, spending a little screen time flipping through my...
Too much screen time. Always too much screen time.
Flipping through my Instagram, and up pops a local gentleman who is talking about how all these condos are being built and not everyone needs to live in a condo, and now there's all these people in this area and there isn't enough parking and there isn't enough grocery stores and so on. But that unfortunately, I'm not going to mention who this is, but that naive thought process is what we're kind of talking about here. You need to put the density in so that it can support the business.
And the more you intervene with these things, the more complicated it gets. And let me give you an example. If there is viability for a grocer to be in a neighborhood, they will find a way. The opposite is if you mandate, for example, every multifamily project has to have commercial on the ground floor. Well, you're going to end up with a bunch of empty commercial, and nobody wants that.
And no surviving businesses, and then that has a bad thing. So we're going to keep talking about this because I love this topic. We have to be right back. Welcome back to The Real Build. I'm your host, Jamila, owner-operator of VLS Developments, and I have Andrew Gaucher in the studio today, owner, president, operator of G Group Developments and Dynamic Constructors. I always want to say contractors or construction. Constructors, dynamic constructors.
Is a small variation on the same word, which is confusing.
Well, an amazing developer and builder in town, 50 years of experience behind him. We have been diving deep into most recent master plan community of McKinley Beach that he's been working on for a lot of years. But the topic we were just talking about, and we're going to keep going on this, and that is the perception that what comes first, the chicken or the egg? So in development, people get upset that you densify areas, you build in this housing, there's not enough parking and not enough services, not enough grocery stores, not enough infrastructure for all of this housing to come. Where does this come from? Well, let's tell you. Let's talk about where it comes from.
The people have to be there first.
Yeah.
It's a uncomfortable place when you're growing. There's a term I love, and it says, change is scary at the beginning, messy in the middle, and beautiful at the end.
Yes.
And when you're in the middle of growing any town center, whether you're growing McKinley Beach or you're growing downtown Kelowna, we're in the messy middle right now, where there's high rises going up everywhere. Half of them aren't yet occupied, and once those people are downtown, the services will follow. The market will dictate that.
We're already seeing services follow downtown in the commercial spaces that are coming up available.
By all means, yeah. We've got a couple cute little grocery stores downtown. Safeway, of course, has been here for a long time, but the restaurants and the accommodation. We could use this. We could use another hotel downtown, but you're right. The services are starting to come, but. People get frustrated. There's construction, and I understand that. There's noise and there's traffic. There's really another interesting thing when it comes to parking. The less parking in front of directly in front of a store, which is very counterintuitive, the better the store will do in terms of pedestrian traffic coming in and actually shopping.
There's stats on that.
There's extensive studies on this. So while as a Kelownian, born and raised here, 39 years, it's frustrating not being able to stop and park and walk right into the store like you're able to do most of the time, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. The 1 or 2 or 3 block walk is actually better for the store long run.
But also 10 years ago, when you could stop in front of the store. The chances of that store still being the same store the following year
was very low. And look at the diversity of restaurants and stores we have in downtown Kelowna as an example, as opposed to 10 or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You can't even compare it. I mean, growing up here, you'd go to one or two of the three franchises. You go to like a Boston Pizza or Earl's or something.
Yep.
I mean, there
still
are...
my favorite. Earl's is still my favorite.
It's great. No, I'm not knocking them. But in terms of the choice diversity, there are now hundreds of restaurants you can choose from.
Yeah. And so when we're talking about, the people coming first, that creates the money. It creates, one, when a developer goes in and proposes a condo building or a new townhome project on a, acre infill property. They work alongside with the city engineers to run the calculations to see what the load is, whether it be power or water or sewer service, right?
Yep.
Water in, power in, poop out. Those are the basic things of creating properties. So they run the calculations and they determine what upgrades need to be done to the property to service the design you're submitting. And that design shows how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, which calculates how much power in, water in, poop out. And then they'll come back to you with your DP application, and they'll say, this is what you need to do to upgrade the property and the area.
Yep.
In order to accommodate your project. And that is kind of a decision-making point in some projects on if it's worthy of going forward. Because sometimes you could have to go miles back with a water line and run it in.
Absolutely.
You could have to add a transformer, which is an $80,000 hit typically. Well, they can get more than that, but...
Yeah, it can range widely. So they do, I believe the term is like a system review. So, the traffic from a project that's way downstream, or the number of toilets flushing from a project that are way downstream, or the water infrastructure, water towers that are required for when you bring a new development on, like you said, all of these things are sized. And then the city with your engineers and the city engineers look at it and say, okay, well, way downstream, we've literally had to upgrade intersections like 16 kilometers away. And he's like, how does this make any sense? Why would the development at X location trigger something 16 kilometers away? Well, they feed the new traffic onto the network and they say, well, your development, unfortunately, is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and subsequently you're going to be the trigger that upgrades this new intersection. And listen, a roundabout, never mind a fully signalized intersection, a roundabout can run in the realm of $500 to $1 million. Yeah. So this is critical infrastructure. I totally acknowledge that, but it's also critically expensive.
And that is now on the cost of the developer and the cost of the project and developing that project. And they, an educated developer will go into this having a budget, understanding that there's going to be some of these things. And if the project still works after finding out what needs to be done, it goes forward, or it might need to densify, get more doors to pay for this infrastructure that needs to go in. And then that's a negotiation with the city and the municipality. And that's kind of like the inner workings of that development permit application process and where the money comes from to actually upgrade these services. So, right now, the provincial government densified every single family home to a minimum of 4 doors, can go to 6. And a lot of people are saying, where are these people going to park? How is the water pressure going to be enough? Is there enough power? And this is what happens in the process. We mentioned earlier in the show, if you decided today you wanted to develop your property, you're about a year away from putting a shovel in the ground. And this is a key part of the process, is determining what upgrades need to be done for those services to make sure that it works within the community. So the alternate of that is a city going, hey, we want to put a whole bunch of houses here and we think people are going to come live here. So we're going to spend millions of taxpayer dollars to upgrade all this stuff and wait for the people to come. I don't think anyone's voting for that platform. Right?
No, generally not. And no disrespect to government employees or planners, but generally they're not the ones that are seeking out the best market opportunities. Mm-hmm. So while sometimes they might be right, saying, we want to spend, bicycle infrastructure is a good thing. Mm-hmm. For a good example, for instance, where, they do have the data to say we need to upgrade. The Ethel corridor was recently upgraded, and it's great, and it's right. But for saying all of the future residents in Kelowna should or will want to live in this particular district is pretty tricky to say that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, who thought so many people would want to live way up in the Upper Mission after the last fires? Right?
Absolutely. And to be honest, the Upper Mission's almost built out. I mean, Kelowna through the next cycle, let's just say for the next 10 years, will run out of new greenfield development. There will not be a whole bunch of new single-family neighborhoods coming online or even just small-scale subdivisions. And that's one of the reasons why infill, in a lot of ways, is very timely. And if you don't want to live in a condo or an apartment-type building, and you've run out of new single-family type product, then the next best option for ground-oriented housing, ground-oriented, again, is a term to say that you can walk right into your home from the street. It's going to have to be infill.
And before we really dive into infill, because we're going to talk about this today, because you and I have teamed up to help people with infill.
Educate and help them with their properties, and ideally densify and realize the value of what their property has.
Yeah, but before we get into that, years ago, I sat in a city of Kelowna. I don't even know what to call it. They got a bunch of professionals together to discuss densification and infill of the downtown core. This is way before. This is like, I think it would be pre even RU7 zoning coming into place. And I was there, and to be honest with you, I was so new in the industry. I didn't know why I was there. I was just lucky to sit amongst you guys. But you were sitting there, and parking came up, right? Parking is a huge topic. It's usually the reason why projects get shut down, because neighbors come and say, where is everyone going to park? They've taken away that red tape now with some municipality changes, and they've left it up to the developer to decide on their parking. And if I can actually sell a unit without a parking stall, I can make that choice to do, right? That's kind of the new way things have gone.
It varies by municipality. Some still have minimum requirements, like notwithstanding, I think the province basically asked and said, on certain areas you can't ask for parking anymore, parking minimums. And I believe that some municipalities still have minimums, like, for example, to say 1 car per unit.
Yes. And now the movement of city living, which we're starting to see dense city living here in Kelowna, but think about Toronto, think about Vancouver, New York, LA, this dense city living is to actually move away from vehicles, right? So we've gone like huge into electric vehicles, which are more efficient. We're seeing driverless cars. I saw a driverless car in San Francisco for the first time. It blew my mind. I was like, let me in this thing. I want to know. I want to do this.
Is it Waymo?
I don't remember who it was, but you got to sign up. Anyway, so you had said, if we're ever going to be in a place where we rely on vehicles less, we need to take away the luxury of being able to have all these vehicles, which is limiting parking, right?
Yeah, so nobody's ever said this to me, but it has to occur to any of us driving in Kelowna that the more inconvenient or more expensive parking can get and driving can get, it will, the perhaps unintended consequence is that it will force people out of their cars and to walk more.
Yeah.
So, we have a number of parkades in Kelowna, downtown Kelowna now. We did not have those 15 years ago. And so using a parkade and then walking to where you're going, or, I guess in a perfect world, if you live in a complete community where you can live, work, and play within, so say, a 15-minute walk, then it's all very convenient, right? Where I think downtown Kelowna is sort of just getting there.
Yes.
You could, especially if you have a hybrid job where you maybe work from home some days, you could probably live, work, and play all in downtown Kelowna now.
Well,
but this is the first time in maybe ever. The last 5 or 6 years is maybe the first time ever that's been a real viability for Kelowna.
And like you said, we're in the middle of the mess of change right now. When we come back, we're going to keep talking, and we're going to dive right into infill development and how every single-family homeowner in this city has the ability to redevelop the property. We're going to talk about how. Welcome back to The Real Build. I am Jamila, your host, owner-operator of VLS Developments, and I have an amazing guest here with me today, Andrew Gaucher. Thank you for coming.
Happy to be back.
Andrew Gaucher is the president of G Group Developments and Dynamic Constructors, an amazing construction company here in the city. He's his third generation developer with 50 years of experience developing many sites in this city. We've been talking about it the whole show. If you've missed some of it, I'll be posting it on the YouTube channel, The Real Build. You can find us there. But what we want to talk about now is infill development. the provincial government had mandated, and this was all implemented in June, that every municipality across BC changes their zoning bylaws for single-family home to accommodate more houses, essentially giving people the ability to keep their house, add some more homes in the backyard, tear their house down, redevelop the whole property. You know, if you want to downsize, but you don't want to leave your property, you can build your little condo in the backyard. If you need housing for your kids, you can build that in the backyard. And if you just want to turn it into a rental property and move off to Mexico, you can do that too. Andrew, let's talk more about that.
Infill's super interesting. It is just rife with opportunities. So whether you have had a property that you own and you've lived at for many years, or maybe it's your family, or maybe you want to downsize, there's just so many different ways to approach infill, and it can be really cool. One of the main things that initially attracted me to infill development was the pedestrian scale. And what I mean by that is when you're walking down a street, or when you're driving down a street for that matter, you really only experience the first 10, 20, 30 feet, so up to maybe 3 stories. After that, for example, if you drive by a high rise, you don't experience what's on the 16th floor or the 26th floor or the 46th floor. It's very much sterilized as far as the pedestrian experience goes. So when you're looking at infill, it's really it's often called small scale multi-unit housing. And when it means small scale is you're dealing mostly with sometimes at the very low end, just adding a carriage house behind a house to a laneway, or you know, even a high density infill is usually referring to something like 4, 6 units. In the future, you're going to start to see something called single stair egress, and that's going to be, you know, you might get 12 units, vertical, 6 stories, 2 per story, over 6 stories. But for the time being, most infill is townhouse and row house in configuration, and again, is really that pedestrian scale. So it's really what each of us experience when we think about, like, what's it like in my community? What do I feel like when I walk around? Well, we're going to be creating those built environments when we build out in infill.
Well, and this is a great place where you can get 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom product, that family product that you don't necessarily get out of condos and sky rises, right? And they aren't necessarily, you know, that 1,200 square foot townhome. There's a lot of people out there developing larger size, 2,000 square feet over 3 levels, where you can get that family home living within the inner city, which is super important because, like we spoke earlier, single family home lots are of the past, creating them and producing them. And we need to still accommodate people that need the size of the home, but maybe just doesn't have as much yard to mow and a driveway to plow, right?
Absolutely. So having the freedom to, assuming you can afford it, having the freedom to choose what kind of housing you live in is in a lot of ways, people feel that's a very Canadian or North American thing. You know, everybody wants some space and wants some privacy, et cetera. And when you start to reduce the number of single family available, it just makes the current single family more and more expensive.
Yes.
So if you want something similar, the next best thing is going to be infill development. And like you said, you know, I guess you could develop very small ones, but then it starts to feel more like a condo. But there's also lots of opportunities when you can have a 3-bed, 3-bath, 2,000 square feet. You can have a beautiful private rooftop patio. It depends, of course, where you are. You can have views from that. So you really can marry both worlds of a single family type experience with a garage, but in a more urban location. So whether it's that you want to live close to downtown, or you want to live close to work, or you want to live close to amenities. As we know, Kelowna has 5 town centers, and there's infill opportunities in any of those town centers. So whichever town center is your favorite, there's going to be infill opportunities near you.
Yeah, and now I mentioned earlier, you and I have teamed up, and we've created a company, a brand called Performance Infill.
You got it.
And the reason why we wanted to do this was knowing this was coming down the pipeline. We wanted to create a place where people can go and get the information on kind of how they would start, what it looks like, what they do, how do they pay for it, what makes a good eligible product, how do they work with the municipalities, how do they work with the mortgage broker. We created a 7-series video series, actually, that's up on YouTube under Performance Infill, that talks about all these topics, about how you get started. And we also offer the services to work with you to help develop that property and even build that property out to the end. So, you know, infill is very exciting. To me, I think it's given the average everyday person has won the lottery a little bit with this rezoning. And we can help you have a conversation, understand where the potential is, if there is potential for you.
Yep.
And talk about what your goals are to do with it, what you'd like to see, and if that works. And that's usually the first step. And everyone wants to know how it's going to get paid for. That's usually, the first question. And I think that if you have a almost paid off or fairly low mortgage left on your property, and you've bought, 10, 20 years ago,
Yep.
You've gained equity, that equity available can be leveraged to your build without any additional cash going in. So think about that. And if you're in that position and you might want to redevelop, reaching out to Performance Infill, or you can reach out to the Real Build as well, and I can connect you. But we can help you through that process.
We've created a turnkey solution. So, the infill, as we've discussed, is ripe with opportunity. But we've created a solution to also make sure that you can avoid any of the pitfalls and have a professional with decades and hundreds of units of experience walk you through that process.
Now, there's lots of reasons to want to do this. One of my favorite ones of people that approach me is that they want their husband to have their shop.
Oh, yeah.
He's been in the garage. I want to have him have his shop, and I want it to be big enough for him to work on his cars and do his woodworking, and I want him out of the house.
That's a common one. And the other one I really love hearing about is multi-generational housing.
Oh, yes.
So whether you're a baby boomer and maybe you have an adult child who can't afford to get into the market, or whether you're maybe your 40s, 50s, 60s, and you have an elderly parent, and maybe you don't want them living in your house, but having them live on the same property right next door is fantastic and convenient. So a lot of people are looking at that as an opportunity of infill as well.
Amazing. Andrew Gaucher, thank you for joining me. 50 years of experience. We need to have you back on the show.
Happy to, anytime.
Okay, amazing. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. This is The Real Build, your host, Jamila, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Thanks.